Welcome, everyone. I would like to say thank you for joining us today at another webinar. Today, we are going to take you to India, and then from India to the Gulf countries. And we are here with a good friend of mine and a very good migration scholar, Dr. Ginu Zacharia Oommen. And so let me say a couple of words on Ginu. And Dr. Ginu Zacharia Oommen is a member of the Kerala Public Service Commission. And this is a body created by the Constitution of India to select applicants for civil service jobs in the state based out of Thiruvananthapuram. And he was a visiting professor at the Foundation Maison des Sciences de l'Homme in Paris, and he has held various fellowships and has been a visiting faculty at many illustrious universities and think tanks of repute across the world. He had been a postdoctoral fellow at Migrant at the Center for International Migration at the University of Poitiers, France, and a fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library in New Delhi, Centrum Moderner Orient in Berlin, Gulf Studies Program JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, Indian Council for World Affairs in New Delhi, Center for South Asia West China Cooperation, Sichuan University in China, and India Center for Migration in New Delhi. We would like to see, of course, Ginu at our university also, Social Sciences University of Ankara. He had been a visiting graduate fellow at the Rothberg International School, also Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He had been awarded 2 prestigious fellowships, namely the Swedish Institute Guest Postdoctoral Fellowship at Uppsala University, Sweden, and a visiting senior fellowship at the Middelburg University of Maastricht University in Netherlands. And but he had to decline, so he was preoccupied with other fellowships. And he had completed his master's in political science from Madras Christian College, MCC, and PhD from the prestigious Center of West Asian Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, on the Jews of Cochin in Israel. His major publications include Ethnicity, Marginality, and Identity, the Jews of Cochin in Israel, South Asian Migration to Gulf Countries, History, Policies, Development, and Asianization of Migrant Workers in the Gulf Countries, which was released by Springer in 2019. He had been an active participant in the students' movement during the university and was the general secretary of the Jawaharlal Nehru University Students' Union, which is a very important union, actually, student union in India in 2001 and 2002. He also served both as the national vice president and national president of the All India Students' Federation. He was also the chairman of Political Science Association of Madras Christian College. And India Today magazine selected him as one of the 50 young leaders of India in their special survey, Mobilize and Empower. He had been the group leader of the government of India's Indian youth delegation to China, headed by the Union Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs at the time. He was also a delegate at the World Festival of Youth and Students South Africa. And his research is mainly focused on migration and international development, which is a very important aspect of migration, obviously, with a special focus on Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC countries, and South Asia. His areas of specialization include South Asia Gulf migration, Indian Jewish history, global migration and refugee studies, social remittances and identity, transnational religious organizations. He has conducted extensive field research in Israel, Palestine, France, Kuwait, and Kerala, and he has published extensively in academic journals and leading newspapers in India. Today, we are very happy to host you again, and it's our pleasure. And hopefully we'll see you in Ankara also one day.
Thank you.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
So, shall I start?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebnam, for giving this wonderful opportunity to address the Social Sciences University of Ankara, which I'm taking it as a privilege and an honor, especially in this time of, in the context where we all are somehow getting relief from the pandemic. I am supposed to speak on the new trends in the India Gulf migration in the context of COVID. The people of Indian subcontinent having a long history of migration into the different parts of the world. The Indian migration to outside world can be divided into two phases: colonial period and post-colonial period. Colonial period, the people migrated basically for three main reasons: slavery, indentured labor, and of course trade. Slavery, of course, dates back to centuries, but a formal systematic migration from India started from the mid-19th century to the second half of 20th century in form of indentured labor. That was basically to former French and British colonies in Southeast Asia, in Caribbean, and in Africa. And of course, it was basically to sent to British plantation and also to the construction of railways, so on and so forth. Therefore, we could see now there are few countries in the world where people of Indian origin are the single largest ethnic community. For example, Fiji, Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, in Mauritius. They are the single largest community, and they also occupy important positions like president and prime minister and other important positions. There are also some other countries where they are a significant minority, like South Africa, East Africa, and Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. These are the places where they are a significant minority. All because of the root. If you look at the root of all this diaspora, they are basically because of the indentured labor process. Then, in the colonial period, the migration was at two levels. First, the student migration to Western countries for higher education. Second, of course, labor migration to the advanced countries. However, in 1960s and 70s, oil boom was actually a major shift in the labor migration of India. It was actually a blessing in disguise for the entire Indian subcontinent. If you look at the Indian subcontinent, India and Middle East having a very ancient relationship with each other. Trade linkage, religious and cultural proximities, scholastic interactions, all these things one could see between these two regions. But when you look at the present South Asia Gulf migration or India Gulf migration, the reasons are different. But before getting into the reasons, let me also point out that during the British period, the Gulf were under the British presidency in Bombay, and the Indian migrants were the preferred workforce of British in government, in police, in telecommunications, all these sectors. Indians used to work in from around 1920s, 30s, 40s. Their presence was there. Secombe and Lawless are the two scholars who have worked on that. Surendra Gopal from India have worked extensively on the presence of Indians in the Gulf. And before that, there were traders. For example, ports like Aden, Hormuz, Bandar Abbas, all these places, even in the Gulf ports, all there were presence of the Indian Benia merchants. So therefore, even in the post-colonial period and in the latest stage, before the exploration of oil, I wanted to mention and highlight there was a presence of Indians. But what were the reason for the sudden flow of migrants to the Gulf? That was basically in South Asia. If you look at the South Asia, that was basically because of poverty, unemployment, starvation, natural disasters, political turmoils. These are some of the reasons why they have migrated to Gulf. But when we talk about the India-Gulf migration, we can't discuss India-Gulf migration in isolation. India-Gulf migration had to be within the context of South Asia Gulf migration. South Asia Gulf migratory corridor was, I can't say is, because after COVID it has changed, was one of the largest migratory corridor in the world. International Migration Report of 2018 that pointed out of around 35 million South Asian workforce all around the world, 14 to 15 million were in the Gulf. And again, these data sometimes, especially in the Gulf, well, they are not reliable, but still there are 14 to 15 million were there, after which 8 to 9 million were Indians, then around 5 million from Bangladesh, 3 million from Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Nepal, 1 million each. 2018, South Asia received around 140 billion US dollars as remittances. Of course, the major share had gone to India, around 80 billion US dollar. And then, of course, Pakistan with around 22.5 billion, Bangladesh around 18 billion dollars, and Nepal and Sri Lanka 8.1 and 6.7 billion dollars. If you look at the India migration pattern, I will try to bring a bit history so that you can understand it much better. If you look at the migration pattern, 1970s, it was very fast. And 1980s, it actually, and it dipped, it slowed down. 1990s, it picked up again. Why 1990s, it picked up again? There is a political reason for that. Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. And then after the liberation of Kuwait, as you all know, you are from the region, because of a certain political position taken by certain countries, the Palestinians, Syrians, Yemenites, they had to leave Kuwait, basically from Kuwait and the Gulf. And that vacuum has been filled by Indians and from the people from South Asia. And later in 2000, there was again a peak, but in 2010, it again slightly weakened because of Nitaka and other issues, but more or less around 8 to 9 million people, that was the average estimate. And most of the migrants were stationed in UAE and Saudi Arabia. When we look at the Indian Gulf migration, one of the states of India which responded overwhelmingly to this migration was Kerala. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kerala. Kerala is in the southernmost state of India, in the southern tip. Well, earlier, it was known as Malabar. And the Malabar coast is very near to Kerala. I'm sure you are familiar with the term Malabar. There was voluminous trade between Middle East and Malabar. Before 15th century, the Arab merchant virtually used to control the spice trade. And there is also cultural proximity and religious proximity between these two regions. All the three Semitic religions came to Malabar or to Kerala because of the trade, the Jewish, the Eastern Orthodox Christians, and also Muslims. They all came from Middle East and established the Semitic religion in Kerala because of this trade, because of the trade links. So Kerala is which is one of the major Gulf pockets of South Asia. South Asia have many Gulf pockets in the northwestern French province in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in all places there are Gulf pockets. But in South Asia, one of the major model of Gulf pockets is Kerala. Around 2.21 million people from this particular state alone are in Gulf. And also this remittances actually had a major impact on the socio-economic progress of Kerala in terms of investment in health, in education, in terms of real estate boom, consumerism, everything. It's actually a model. And also now it has the migrants have started. Now Kerala is not a largest sending state. Now the migrants have started moving from Bihar, UP, Rajasthan. These are states, these are provinces of India. But let me highlight some of the main features and characteristics of India Gulf migration. This is slightly different from other migration. Number one, Indians in the Gulf countries are a group of preference and choice. Let me underline this word, preference and choice, because the Gulf, the regime, the government, they're really happy and wanted Indians to be there. Why? If you're interested more in that, you have to read a UN paper by the Polish sociologist Andrzej Kapuscinski, who was an anthropologist in Poland. Later, he was an ambassador in UAE, and he has written a UN paper called Asian versus Arab Migration in the Gulf countries. In 60s and 70s, in the Gulf countries, the workforce was dominated from the neighboring Arab countries. Then, of course, the oil exploration, production, though the Gulf government had some kind of a control, it was a remote control by the Anglo-Saxons. So during that period, there was a strong presence of USSR, socialist parties, Ba'athists, and also the trade unions. So they feared that there could be some kind of a political turmoil in these key oil installations. So 70s onwards, the workforce from the neighboring countries were silently and systematically were slowly sidelined and recruitment stopped. In that gap, Indians in large numbers entered, and also to some extent Pakistanis. So that's why for them, Indians are very naive, submissive, hardworking, and also they don't create any sort of political issues there. So therefore, Indians reaching there in Gulf is not only because of they have a trade links and so on and so forth, but because of the strategic reasons. This is the one nobody is talking about. It's actually the Indians, the Gulf in GCC countries, they're happy to have the Indians, and they never created any issue or problem for last 40 years. Second, see, even in the Indian diaspora, if you look at the chart, we'll say country 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, but GCC actually not a diaspora. Myron Wiener, the American sociologist, he termed it as incipient diaspora. Diaspora means you have social rights, political rights, voting rights, you have the right to build a house, you have you have all sort of, you live there. You have, maybe there are some issues will be there, but you are a part like any other citizens there. But in Gulf, Myron Wiener have termed it as incipient diaspora, where the migrants are reaching there for a shorter period of time to make more money, and they don't have any kind of rights other than social rights, and they have to leave after the contract. That's it, period. So this is actually an incipient diaspora. And Gulf migration, remember, in India, it's a male-centric phenomenon. 80% of the Gulf migrants are low-skilled, semi-skilled workers. Out of 8 million to 9 million, they were, it's the past. Now we don't know what is happening now. So they were semi-skilled, low-skilled workers, basically in the construction sector, manufacturing, and then as drivers, then as technicians, masons, carpenters, assistant, domestic workers. These are the main occupation. And then of course, with the IT boom and the globalization process, all these things happened in 90s. there are also, influx of professionals, IT experts, doctors, and so on and so forth. And there is also another group which are nurses and paramedic. I will deal with that later. So this is a main-centric phenomenon. So they are reaching there for a shorter period of time. So the India Gulf migration is circulatory and transitory in nature. Let me underline once again, circulatory and transitory in nature. Because why it's transitory? Transitory, it's only for a short period of time, and then it circulates. Every year, a new set of people will be coming, and another set of people are going back. So it's always circulating. So these are some of the, the characteristics of the India Gulf migration. And India Gulf migration, it was not a state-sponsored migration. It was basically two important elements which work for the migrations are social networks and second, recruitment agencies. Well, somebody from a village, he reached the Gulf. Then he will inform his friends and relatives that, there is a place, we have a work, this is the Gulf, and about the Riyadh and Gulf and everything. The sort of image and dissemination of information is by a relative or a friend. That is called the social network. Then he will connect with the recruitment agency. Then through the recruitment agency, they will reach them. And the cheating of recruitment agencies, some of the bogus recruitment agencies, fake recruitment agencies, these are all a part of this game. They have to pay a lot to reach there. So therefore, the states started playing a larger role in the India Gulf migration in a very, only from, I could say from nearly from 2002 or 2003. And finally, in this part, I want to highlight that three main crises in the last 30, 40 years, apart from COVID, that migrants have faced. Number one, Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. More than 100,000 people had to be evacuated, but they had a hope, and most of them have returned back. Second, global recession, and third is the takip. Well, global recession and as well as in the nationalization of takip and other things, we expected a major reverse migration, but that did not happen that much because people who came, they all left, they all returned back. Why? That's what the beauty of Gulf migrant, Indian migrants in the Gulf. See, they are sort of living like a family, how they live here. So one person, if he loses a job, the other person, then he will go and stay with his friends. He won't try to leave the place. And then his status is undocumented worker without any document, but still they will stay back, try for work to get something. So not all of them will return back. So some of them, during the amnesty, when they give amnesty, like the countries, when they ask them to leave, they leave. Otherwise, they try for job and they do small jobs here and there and try to continue that. So this is basically, I'm giving an overall picture of the India Gulf migration. First, the Indian migration, then the India Gulf migration. Now I am coming to the COVID context. The pandemic has rerouted and reshaped the entire migratory process. South Asian workforce, which was the backbone of the Gulf countries, were on the roads to nowhere. The pandemic has exposed the already existing vulnerabilities of the Indian migrant and also the exploitative nature of the kafala system. The net result of COVID pandemic was unemployment, underemployment, wage cut, mass retrenchment. These are some of the impact which no one could, it's unprecedented. So one of the most vulnerable group during the COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021 were the undocumented workers, because they never had any document. They can't even go to any hospital. They can't go to any places. And of course, the women and elderly. The Gulf countries tried their best to support the migrants. But even though they are the rich countries, but the health sector, they have, there's very limited. Even the natives, even for their own nationalities, they could not, cater much. The Indian government had to, dispatch a medical team to Kuwait. So this was the situation. So one thing which the policymakers in India and also even officials that we had come to know through this COVID pandemic is, the shallowness, the perils of, the health protection system. The migrants are living there without any sort of social security protection or a welfare mechanism. I will tell you why I am saying this. After when the pandemic started, by March, April, the migrants were asking not for food or for COVID. Of course, COVID vaccine was not there. They are asking for basic medicines for the lifestyle diseases like blood pressure, cholesterol, then you have diabetes, kidney problem, liver, all they have different issues. They sign a contract before they leave. And that contract, which includes health protection also, insurance also. But only when during the COVID pandemic, the Indian government and the Indian authorities come to know with that insurance, they can't even go and buy basic medicines. They buy medicines from here 3 to 4 months, stockpile of medicines they keep. And then when these medicines are about to reduce or to finish, they will get these medicines from a friend or relatives who are coming from India to Gulf. So what really happened during the pandemic? The borders were closed. The flights stopped moving. Then they have no clue from where to get these medicines. So they actually, through different social media, in the television channels, what they said that we may not die of COVID, we may die of stroke or heart attack. So get us medicines. So the Kerala government actually dispatched medicines for these lifestyle diseases to the migrants. So why I'm saying this is the situation of the migrants in the Gulf. As an Indian, I'm not going to sit here and blame the Gulf countries because there is unemployment and because there is poverty. They have no other choice but to go to this to Gulf countries. Well, by May 2020, because of lots of pressure, the government of India have started evacuating the migrants with the operation. The name of the operation was Vande Bharat Mission, and also there were other philanthropist organizations and also many other organizations actually have involved in this process. According to the estimate given by the government, around 4 to 5 million Indians have been evacuated from all over the world. 4 to 5 million, out of which majority were from the Gulf. By road, by sea, by flight, this evacuation happened. Kerala, which had 2.2 million migrants in the Gulf, around 1.5 million white migrants have returned back. Now, the major issue of this COVID is there is a campaign going on in South Asia. It's called wage theft. What is a wage theft? Wage theft is nothing but when there was this pandemic, the employers have closed down the companies The construction companies, manufacturing companies, different hotels, everything had been closed down. There was a lockdown, complete lockdown. And then the employees were panicked. Somehow the migrants had to leave. So the employers have taken this as a pretext and did not pay the migrants salaries, arrears, residual dues, compensation, even salaries of 6 to 7 months, 1 year they have not paid. One of the main issues of migrants in the Gulf is that irregular payment of salary. The salary won't be paid at the right moment or the right month. So always a salary of few months will be in the hands of a sponsor or the employer. When I talk about employer, I want to underline one thing very clearly. I'm not talking against GCC governments per se. An employer can be an Indian, it can be a Kuwaiti, it can be Turkish, it can be European, it can be anyone. So be clear about that point. The employer can be anyone. Only thing is that if you are planning to have a business in Dubai, you need a partner from the citizen, and from then they can start a business. So therefore, even there are some rich businessmen from Kerala, even they did not pay them the arrears and salaries. There were demonstrations, even I don't want to name them, there were demonstrations even in Kerala. So therefore, why that happened? That is the main question. Why these wages, why these arrears, why these residual dues were not paid? Because there is no law there to protect the rights of the labor. There is no system in place to handle this kind of situation. And that is the reason the employer had the courage to do that. Not only on COVID, during my field research in Kuwait, I had interviewed around 50 to 60 Kerala migrants who had actually have seen the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Because Kerala is in the southern tip of India. And fortunately, we are very happy. We never seen any wars. We never had, had any refugee problem, war, nothing we had seen, because, it is the southern tip, then in the both, one side is Indian Ocean, the other side is Arabian Sea. So we never, it's an Arabian Sea. So we never seen in that way the, war or a major conflict or these things. So I really wanted to know how a Malayali felt in Kuwait in 1990s, evacuating the war, and then as a refugees they are moving to Dubai, and from there evacuation, all this process. So I just wanted to write a paper. I have interviewed them. When I interviewed them, even then the employers did the same thing. When the employees were when these migrants were leaving, they did not pay the salary. They didn't pay any sort of compensation or anything. Migrant for Asia is one of the largest body which is working on the migrants all over the world, especially on South Asian migrants. According to their estimates, there are millions of dollars that these employers owe to these migrants, which have not been paid. Nepal have registered these complaints, these things with the mission, and then they have started reclaiming it. Some of the governments have intervened and asked the employers to pay, and they have paid. But still, a lot of money they still owe them, and they have to pay. Then I come to a final a point, that is the women migrant force. According to the ILO, there are around 30% of the workforce in Gulf are women. And women are basically in 2-3 sectors. They are, as caregivers, as cook, as domestic workers, in the saloons, in manufacturing units, in hospitality industries, and these are the places where they work. Mostly in the household as domestic workers and caregivers and helpers. These are basic, what is the nature of their job. And why they are leaving from South Asia is because of, when they have families debt-ridden, or, the family have major issues, when the family have no other choice, when the husband, is ill, or these kind of situation, when the husband is alcoholic, they leave. And when they reach there, they won't tell, they will inform the relatives. Here back in India that they are going as maids and helpers, because for them it's a shame. So they won't tell the relatives or neighbors where they are going. They say they're going to the Gulf to work. But actually, there is this women migrant workforce is one of the least researched category in the Gulf migration, because it's very difficult to access to the women migrant workforce there. First of all, they are very scared to open up and discuss anything. And secondly, it's very difficult to access to them. Only three major work which I can mention, anybody is interested. Number one is a UN paper, South Asian Women Migrants in the Gulf countries, the UN paper by Iraqi. The second important work, because another major category of women workforce, they are nurses, they are paramedics, and they are teachers, and of course, they are also in the managerial, secretarial jobs. So nursing community and paramedic community is a major, sort of a visible group of women workforce in the Gulf countries, and most of them are from Kerala. Marie Percot, French anthropologist from CNRS, she was the first one to work on this. And if you're interested, you can Google Marie Percot. Then you will get few articles on the nursing community of Kerala in the Gulf countries. The third work is another, again, a fantastic work that is about the women migrant workers from Sri Lanka. That is by Michelle Ruth Gambut. She has written on Sri Lankan women migrant workers in Gulf countries, the female breadwinners. These are the three major work, I could suggest to you for that. Myself and my co-author, my co-researcher, Anu Abraham, we have, written a long paper. What was the impact of COVID pandemic on this women migrant workforce? It took nearly 6 to 7 months for us to get information, talk to them, and they were not ready to talk. And it is very difficult to listen to their stories. So basically, Anu, which was interviewing them, even the nurses and the paramedics, they have to work long hours without any safety gears. Sometimes without any sort of mask and gloves. Sometimes, because at that point of time there was scarcity for all these things, and they never had any leave. And then after they are exposed to this virus and they go back home, then they live in a small flat, and of course they'll pass this virus to their family members. So it was very difficult. The health workers, particularly the women health workers in the Gulf, had suffered a lot during the COVID pandemic. The second thing, the domestic workers, maids and helpers in household, one woman said it was almost like iftar every day, because she has to work around the clock, because the children, everybody who was studying abroad, of course they have the right to come back, and she couldn't even sleep. And the moment there is any sort of symptoms, they'll be thrown out from the home, from the household. So there are some employers paid for the vaccination, send them to the hospital, and send them to the shelter homes. But some places they literally have to leave. And the normal case, these women are subjected to abuse, physical abuse, and also harassment. They run away. When they run, or when they move away from this household, their passport and documents are with the sponsor or with the employer. That is the whole exploitative nature of kafala system. Then they work as an undocumented helper or a domestic worker in multiple households. So they go to multiple households and work. During the COVID time, the people were not happy with that. They said, if you want to work, you work in one place. Because they were scared that these women will go to different places, then they will they'll get infected. So these are some of the most harrowing stories of the women workforce in the Gulf countries. during the COVID time. And the saloon workers, most of the saloon workers are from South Asia. They said all the saloons were closed and they were without salary, and it was very difficult. And another thing is that even they don't have sell smartphones, Android phones or iPhones. They will give normal phones by the employer. So the embassies on the mission, when they send information regarding the evacuation, about the flight, these women are not getting. So it was another difficult task for these women to leave that place. But the point is, none of them want to discuss this in public because they want to migrate back. Because I asked a person during my field research in Kuwait, there are 10,000 migrants stayed back. They did not go during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. They stayed back in Kuwait. So I asked him, my dear friend, why did you stay back? Because this was war was going on. There was flights were here. You should have gone. He asked me what I will do in India. I have debt. I have taken loans. My sisters, are studying. I have the 2 children. So there I was doing some odd jobs here and saving money. What else I will do there? So this is the situation. I'm not blaming the GCC government, never. But what I'm saying is the situation. Why they are going to the different countries in a very hazardous work, in the most primitive way of policies where they exist, and why they have to go. These are some of the reasons. Well, the World Bank prediction of 2020 was there will be a dip of 20% in the remittances, but that did not happen actually. Remittances actually increased from $80 billion. The 2021 remittances actually jumped to $87 billion. So it was $80 billion US dollars in 2018, and that has actually became 87. You may be asking why, how it happened. It happened because there were savings of these migrants, and all of them they immediately transferred to India when they transferred to the banks in India when they came, and also in the small traders, they say bakala, kiosks, and all these people they have savings there to run the business. All of them immediately shifted before they left. So that's the reason there's an increase in the remittances. India received around $87 billion, and 23% were from UAE, and around 45 to 50% were basically from the Gulf. And Kerala, received around 16 billion US dollars out of this 87 billion. Is almost equal to the Bangladesh remittances. So finally, I would like to conclude saying there should be an international migration system to handle this hapless migrants. There was a distress migration. COVID pandemic actually was an unprecedented situation, and we have seen a distressed, hapless migration. And only way is that there should be international migration management system. For that, there is already a non-binding UN resolution that was passed in Morocco by the head of the states and the representatives. More than 120 countries have signed that as a global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. And the main objectives of that should be implemented at the earlier, and it should be a binding resolution, and that should be implemented immediately. One of the main issues of the India Gulf or South Asia Gulf is there is no data. Nobody knows. Now people are returning back. We don't have any clue how many people are going, how many people are coming. So now people are returning back to the Gulf. No data available. There are data, but there is no accurate data regarding this. Number two, a decent work environment. And number three, there should be a grievance redressal mechanism where there should be access to the legal mechanism. And of course, there should be, a proper contract where they will get. These are some of the objectives of these non-binding UN resolution. And both sending and the receiving countries should sign or should respect the ILO conventions and the UN charters and make sure that these migrants are protected, because the violation of any of their rights is also a human rights violation. It is also affecting their dignity. It is also negating their basic rights. So therefore, I hope that the COVID pandemic is an eye-opener, and the government all over the world will come together and think for new policies which will be helpful for the migrants. Thank you very much.